Chapter 1: The Ride. My sister used a rideshare app to get home from a work event last November. Late evening, about 11 p.m., a 40-minute ride across the city. She has done this dozens of times. She is careful about it. She checks the license plate, checks the driver's photo, checks the rating. She does what she's supposed to do. She told me about this trip in a way that suggested she had been deciding whether to tell anyone at all, and had finally decided she needed to say it out loud to someone. The driver matched the photo and the plate. Rating was 4.9. She got in, confirmed the destination, put in her earbuds, and looked at her phone for the first part of the ride. Nothing unusual. Traffic, streetlights, the normal texture of a city at night. About 15 minutes in, she looked up and noticed the route was different. Not dramatically wrong, not heading out of the city or onto a highway going nowhere. Just a few streets off what she expected. She almost said nothing. Then she opened the map in the app and saw that the route was indeed correct, just a slightly different path than the one she had mentally mapped. She went back to her phone. She looked up again about 5 minutes later because something had changed that she couldn't immediately identify. The driver had not spoken since confirming the destination. The music that had been playing quietly from the front speakers had stopped. The car felt different in a way she couldn't articulate. Not temperature, not speed, not sound, just different. She looked at the driver in the rearview mirror. He was looking at the road. Then he looked up and made eye contact with her in the mirror. He held it for a moment. Then he said quietly and without any particular inflection, "You remind me of someone." She said something non-committal. He didn't respond. They rode in silence for another few minutes. Then he said, "She doesn't know I think about her." My sister didn't respond. She kept her eyes on her phone, aware that her hands were shaking slightly. She opened her location sharing and sent it to me. I got the notification at 11:23 p.m. and texted her immediately, which she told me later was the thing that grounded her. The driver said nothing else for the remaining 12 minutes of the trip. He pulled up to her building correctly, said "have a good night" in a completely normal tone, and drove away. She gave him a 3-star rating and wrote a vague note about feeling uncomfortable. The app sent her an automated response thanking her for her feedback. She never heard anything else about it. She told me the thing she can't stop thinking about is how normal the end of the ride was. How easily she could have convinced herself that the 2 statements in the middle were nothing, just a strange man saying strange things, harmless, forgettable. She told me she's fairly certain they were nothing. She told me she's not entirely certain. She takes different routes home now. She always shares her location. She always sits where she can see the door handle. Chapter 2: The Runner. I run early in the mornings, have for years. 5:30 a.m., same route through my neighborhood and the park at the end of the street, about 5 miles total. I know the route the way you know something you've done hundreds of times. I know which sidewalk squares are uneven, which streetlight flickers, where the dogs in the houses on Elm Street start barking as I pass. About 8 months ago, I started noticing another runner on my route. Not unusual. My neighborhood has several early runners, people I recognize by sight without knowing their names. But this person was different in a way I had trouble pinning down at first. They ran about 200 yards ahead of me, always not gaining ground, not losing ground, always exactly 200 yards ahead. I noticed it first because I'm a consistent pacer, and I know roughly how far ahead 200 yards looks, and this person was always precisely there. I tried running faster. The gap stayed the same. I slowed down significantly one morning to test it. The gap stayed the same. They didn't turn around, and they didn't look back, but they matched whatever pace I set with perfect consistency. I started taking note of their appearance. Dark running clothes, always. No reflective gear. A height and build that I couldn't specifically identify as male or female at that distance in that light. They never passed anyone else on the route, which was strange because other runners and dog walkers used the same path, and there should have been moments when they had to navigate around someone, but I never saw them adjust for anyone else. I told my wife about it. She suggested I try a different route to see if it was coincidence. I ran a completely different route the next morning, one I had never used before, in a different direction that I planned spontaneously that morning without writing it down or telling anyone. 200 yards ahead of me, the same figure in dark clothing. I stopped running. The figure continued for about 30 more paces, then stopped as well, stood completely still for a moment, then continued and was gone around a corner before I reached it. I stood on an unfamiliar street at 5:45 a.m. and tried to find an explanation. I've been trying to find one since then. I changed my running schedule, different times, different routes, sometimes not running for several days and then going out unexpectedly. The figure has not appeared since that morning, but I haven't been able to fully shake the feeling that it's still out there somewhere, 200 yards ahead of whatever route I'm taking, matching whatever pace I set, waiting for me to catch up to a corner. It has already rounded. Chapter 3. The Letter. My neighbor has lived next door to me for 6 years. She is in her late 60s, retired, keeps a very tidy garden, waves when she sees me, occasionally leaves vegetables from her garden on my doorstep. We are friendly in the way that good neighbors are friendly, warm but not intimate, present without being intrusive. I know nothing about her life before she moved in next door. About 4 months ago, she knocked on my door one evening and asked if she could come in. This was unusual. She had never come inside before. I said of course, and she sat at my kitchen table with the particular posture of someone who has decided to do something difficult and is committed to getting through it. She told me she had been receiving letters, not email, physical letters, handwritten, arriving in her mailbox every 2 weeks for the past 3 months. She had not told anyone until now. She told me she was telling me because she needed someone nearby to know. She showed me one. The handwriting was very small and very precise, covering both sides of a single sheet of paper. I read enough to understand the general content before she gently took it back. The letter was from someone who described in careful detail her daily routine, when she left the house, where she went, how long she stayed, what she bought at the grocery store, what she planted in her garden last spring. All of it accurate, she confirmed, all of it observed. The letter did not make explicit threats. It expressed in the same careful, precise handwriting what the writer described as concern for her well-being. It said the writer wanted to make sure she was safe. It said the writer had been watching over her for longer than she knew. She had taken the letters to the police. They had filed a report and told her to let them know if the situation escalated. The letters had not escalated. They had continued precisely every 2 weeks, and the police had not followed up. She told me she had started varying her routine. She told me she had stopped sitting by the window in the evenings. She told me that knowing someone was watching her every movement had changed the texture of her daily life in ways she was still discovering, that she found herself checking the street before she opened the front door, that she stood with her back to the wall in the grocery store, that she had started leaving lights on in rooms she wasn't in. I told her I would keep an eye out. I gave her my number. I told her to knock on my door any time, day or night. She thanked me and went home. I watched from my window as she walked up her front path, checked over her shoulder before opening her door, and went inside.
The letters, as far as I know, have continued. She mentions them occasionally, briefly, with the matter-of-fact tone of someone who has adapted to something they cannot resolve.
I think about them when I see her in the garden. I think about whoever writes them, sitting somewhere nearby, watching her tend her plants. I think about the phrase she quoted from one of the letters, the one that had made her come to me in the first place. I will always know where you are